Hello and welcome to Raider HQ After Dark. I'm your host, Raider. And this is part one to the requested MST and personal trauma PTSD stressors, uh, or versions of PTSD. So, the reason why I'm having to break this up into multiple videos is because of the complexity of how PTSD that is under MST and personal trauma are evaluated, what evidence makes them sufficient, like sufficient claims, and kind of, stressor review is completely different for these two things. So, in this video, what I'm going to be talking about is kind of defining the difference between personal trauma and MST. What makes a sufficient claim on its face? Now, there's a lot of facets to that, so it's not going to be an absolute thing, but bear with me. And then we're going to talk about the diagnostic requirements needed to sufficiently claim. And then we're also going to talk about who works the MST claims and kind of what that looks like a little bit. So we're going to get into it. Now, this video is very complex, so I might be bouncing around just a little bit on it. So bear with me, please. And then the next video that I'll be doing about it will be exclusively about the stressors and how they are reviewed for. Now, keep in mind, I need to say this caveat here is I was an MST coordinator before they made the switch to having specific regional offices do it. Now, my reviews are going to be a general overview because each of those ROs have their own SOPs, standard operating procedure, MOU, memorandums of understanding, playbooks on how to specifically process your claims. So I can only speak in the here and now in generalities, okay, because I don't have that specialized documents or specialized processing. So once again, this is an overview. I'm providing you with with my disclaimer up front. So let's get into it. All right. So actually, we're going to skip here. So, general information about personal trauma. So, we have personal trauma, which for VA purposes, this is a terminology. So, personal trauma for claims related circumstances has to do with the broadly to the stressor events, personal traumatic events. Which these are some examples. This is not a complete list, but this is a set of examples of like personal assault, battery, robbery, mugging, stalking, and harassment. Now, it is important to note that these are all things that that can have nothing to do with any kind of sexual assault, sexual harassment, sexual stalking, you know, any mugging that has a sexual component to it, it would fall under the MST category. But if you were out at a bar and, like you got into a fight and were beaten up and put into the hospital, that would be personal trauma. So the distinction here is important to make because how you claim on your 526EZ, when you initially claim this, there's going to be two forms that you should fill out. So, number one is the claim form itself. Okay, the 526EZ, or if you're doing it online through va.gov, then you're going to be listing what it is, what you are claiming. Now, you will also need to submit a kind of a stressor explanation statement. So on the combat stressors and all those, we had the VA form 21-0781 form, statement in support of claim for stressor. Well, these two have their own specific document. So it's VA form 21-0781A. And hold on just a second. Through the power of editing, I have pulled it up because I thought, well, I might as well show you guys since I was talking about it. So here's the statement in support of claim for post traumatic stress disorder secondary to personal assault. Now, notice how it doesn't make the distinction between personal assault and MST. Now, if you have either of these, you will use this form, you will fill out this form to the best of your ability. Now, I understand on both sides of that coin, the personal trauma and the MST, you can be at a different stage of your recovery from that mentally, psychologically. So you might be able to only give a little bit of information, or you might be at a point where you can give a lot more information about the stressful traumatic event. Okay. Do your best. But there's a reason we need this information. So the location of the incident, the unit you were assigned during the incident, and then the description of the incident. Okay. I ask you to please do your best because if we come back here, nope, let's move this over here. If you come back here, if you do not provide a sexual component to it to some degree, you don't have to get graphic with it. You don't have to do anything like that. Okay. You just have to say, like, if the harassment was sexual in nature, just say cat calls, whatever you feel comfortable with doing, obviously. And, so that way we can make this distinction because these have two completely different, well, they have similar pathways, but there's more leniency for the evidence review on the military sexual trauma side. Because if you had a personal trauma event where you were physically assaulted, the way that we would concede this, and I'm not going to go too deep into the stressor development or how we look at that because that's going to be a separate video. But we would be looking for hospitalization reports during that time or medical treatment reports during that time. So the personal trauma is different than, say, the military sexual trauma because there is a clear understanding that not all military sexual trauma events are reported, right? So this form must be, should be submitted. I'm going to say should be because I don't like to force people into doing stuff, but you have a higher likelihood of success if you submit to the best of your ability what you can recall, the who, what, when, where, and how, and the how doesn't need to be graphic. You can just summarize it, right? Because we don't need to know specifically down to every single detail what happened. You can provide a generality of it. Obviously, depending on where you're at in your recovery stages, if you can just do a generality, do a generality. If you can be more specific, if you think that's needed in order to to prove your stressor, then fair enough. I'm going to leave that up to you guys. Now, if your description of your incident, if this is not enough characters, you can submit additional documents, like a Word document with this form. Like you could say, see Word document submitted at the same time. You could do that. Okay, that's not going to hurt anything. The people who are reviewing your claim are not going to be wound around the axle that you put it on a different form. Okay. Now, I know that there's probably a lot of stress with filling out this form, so that's why I'm going into this much detail. So, other sources of information, you know, um, if you reported the incident. So, this is important right here. So, this question 10 right here provides you with some kind of details of if you reported, please provide the names and addresses of whoever. If you need to talk to them first, I mean, obviously, this is just a recommendation to reach out to somebody before you put their name on here, just as a courtesy, because they might not like it can be a little jarring to have the VA call you up and kind of grill you about, and they're not going to grill them, but they're going to ask them questions about it potentially if they need to. If the other evidence that you provide doesn't, satisfy the stressor concession. But Anyway, so I just as a courtesy, if you're reporting somebody's name on here to kind of get additional evidence from, let them know beforehand. It's just a courtesy. And then um please provide in the space below any other information that you feel is important for us to know that might help your claim. Now, this is important. You should fill out as much of this as you humanly can because all of this is important. That when we do the stressor development, and whenever I talk about the stressor review, all of these subtle little behavioral things that happen, right? Changes in performance and evaluations. Actually, I'm going to go on record and I'm going to say this is the most important section, unless you have like actual police reports and whatnot. This is the most important section for you to fill out. Now, one of my tips, okay, now this is also important. Before you fill this out, it might be a good idea to go to a VSO and have them review or see if they'll let you sit down and review with them if you feel comfortable. Your I want to call it OMPF records, but it's your military personnel file. And what you're looking for is you're looking for evidence to support any of these subtle things, like a sudden request for a change in occupational series or duty assignment. If that is the case for you, like if you wanted to change MOS or if you wanted to change your unit, right, and go to a different unit or go to a different platoon and you made those requests, then you want to find that evidence and you want to kind of catalog where it is. So that way you can write, like, maybe jog your memory. Okay. Because I'm going to tell you right now, this type of PTSD can create memory gaps. Okay. So it's a good idea if you're able to refresh your memory. If it's too painful or if it's too overwhelming for you, then just do your best. Okay. Like we're not trying to, we'll find it hopefully, because that's what the training's for, is to make you empathetic and look, and you're looking for discrepancies. Now, this isn't a bad thing. This is not a discrepancy against you specifically. This is to show any kind of like change in behavior that could be signaled, or that could signal that something traumatic happened to you that we can't find. So you want to mark any one of these that you can, like, and like I said, this is the most important section that you want to fill out, right? Telling us what happened to you is helps us to understand and qualify what stressor it is. But these things right here help us to support your stressor, helps us to concede your stressor, because we can use these what might to the layperson seem like unassociated behaviors. We can use these to concede your stressor. So this molto importante, okay, this is very important that you, like, this part right here is what you want to focus on, because this, of all this document right here, other than to say a brief description of the event, what happened, this is what the staff members are going to be looking for. This right here. It seems like you would think that they would put more emphasis on this, maybe a different font, maybe bold, but this is the most important evidence that you can submit, besides like hard proof. Like, I have a police report showing X, Y, and Z. Like, that's the hardest proof. Like, that's like presumptively almost level of having proof. But this right here helps you to win your case. Okay. So I know I've went on about it, but I'm going to blow it up just for the sake of showing you guys, so that way you can read it. So section 11. Now you can Google this document. Okay. Like, you can Google the document and you can download this. So it's just the VA form 21-071A form. But yeah, so let's go ahead and let's scroll back down here. And then we have the just the signature section, and that's it. But you can see why this information right here, because we use it to concede your stressor, because the lion's share of the time, there's no direct evidence showing that the military sexual trauma occurred in service. So we have to use this information. So yeah, I'm just going to keep going on that. Now, I wanted to talk about something that I had discussed in the intro about a substantially complete claim. And it's really weird, but even though MST is conceded by the VA, and even though MST is conceded by the military to some degree, if you just put MST on your claim form, this manual reference right here, 841B1E, says that a claim is not substantially complete if a veteran alleges experiencing MST during service but does not claim service connection, SC, for a specific disability resulting from a traumatic experience. Now, this right here can break veterans' brains because everybody knows what MST is. But what they want you to do is, if you don't have a formal diagnosis of PTSD yet, you need to claim either PTSD or the related symptoms, anxiety, depression, things like that. You need to do that. So the way that this should be done is it should be MST with anxiety and depression, or like that's how I would claim it, or PTSD if you're diagnosed with something, major depressive disorder or anxiety or generalized anxiety disorder, whatever your diagnosis is, okay? I would also do a diagnosis and symptoms just to be doubly safe, okay? Because we want to make sure that the first time that you claim it, that it's not kicked back to you because of some kind of stupid procedural insufficiency, because that shuts a lot of MST survivors off. Like, it makes them think that and I'm just generalizing here because I have actually talked to quite a few military sexual trauma survivors. And they said that it shut them down, that it felt like the VA didn't believe them, even though that's not, like, no assessment has even been done at this time. So, once again, very important, it behooves you if you decide to file, that you say, MST, generalized anxiety disorder with anxiety and depression, something to that effect. Obviously, whatever's true for you. And if you don't have a diagnosis, anxiety and depression, whatever's true for you. Lead with the symptoms, because you want to make sure that we get the claim to be sufficient, right? You want to submit the VA form 21-0781A form. You want to complete your 526EZ form or va.gov online form. And so, if a claim form indicates non-sexual MST personal trauma without claiming a disability, follow the rules. So the same is true for personal trauma also. Personal trauma is not a disability. Personal trauma is not a symptom. MST is not a disability, and MST itself is not a symptom, right? So we have to do a little bit more, and that's not intuitive. They don't tell us that, right? They don't tell anybody that claims for this. Like, you'd have to be in the manual looking for this in order to know this. So we want to make sure that we're submitting a sufficient claim. So just add in those symptoms with it. So if it's MST or if it's personal trauma with anxiety and depression, or whatever's true for you. Okay. I know I've kind of, and I need to highlight this here. The VA does not, and that's an italicized not right there, have a duty to assist until a substantially complete application is received. Okay. I'm going to let that sit for a second and let you guys take that into consideration, because could you win this on a higher, could you file a higher level review on this? No, you couldn't, because there's no adjudication. because they said that the claim application itself was insufficient. So no claim is made if you don't take the actions. So do yourselves a favor, please, and just make sure that you understand that the MST and the personal trauma are not disabilities nor symptoms that would qualify for the substantially complete "did you claim a disability?" They don't meet the criteria. Okay. Stupid, I know. Now, oh man, we're at 20 minutes and I'm just at this. Okay. So here's what I wanted. This is the manual reference, and I've showed you this for the combat side of things, but this is 841D2J, and this is the disposition of an issue claimed by service connected PTSD. So this is like how we're supposed to behave. And the reason why, even though this kind of falls within the like after we've either conceded or not conceded the stressor, there's a part of this that I wanted to show you guys is that there is a consideration that if you claim personal trauma or MST and we concede the stressor, the examiner does not have to give you the diagnosis of PTSD for us to be able to grant. We can still grant the claim if the examiner links the diagnosis they give you to your personal trauma history, like the conceded stressor, and they say that, yes, we think that this diagnosis is due to the military service trauma that is conceded or reported. And then the examiner determines that a diagnosis other than PTSD, such as depression, adjustment disorder, whatever it is, happens, then we can still grant. We can still grant the claim. So please do not get wound around the axle about wanting the specific diagnosis of PTSD. Having the diagnosis of PTSD does not necessarily, it doesn't reduce your ability to be granted. Okay? Do not throw a monkey wrench in the system for the diagnosis of PTSD. You will get rated the exact same as if you had the diagnosis of PTSD. You will be rated exclusively on your symptoms for any diagnosis. Okay. So, once again, very important. Now, I can understand. Okay. I can rationalize this, that there are times when it is a personal need to have the VA concede that they caused you personal trauma or post traumatic, that your event was traumatic. Okay, that is a medical diagnosis and it doesn't concede anything with the VA. Getting the diagnosis and getting granted concedes that you experienced a trauma in the military. Okay, because your claim will be shown as MST across the board. It'll be on your code sheet, okay? Based upon certain things on the code sheet that we put on there, it'll have an MST flag, okay? So please keep in mind that your claim will be flagged for MST. Anytime that there is a review on it, it will go to the special, the special regional offices and whatnot. So I say this because what I don't want to have happen is we steal defeat from the jaws of victory. Like you we want to make sure that we just get it granted. Okay? We don't. Now, I can understand if you want to fight that fight, but just keep in mind you don't need to fight that fight, I guess is the better way that I'm saying that. So that's something that I wanted to kind of let you guys know. And there's a whole list of these, and there's no exclusions here. Like you can even have borderline personality disorder or whatnot granted for MST. So now moving on. This is something that I just wanted to kind of point out the process a little bit. So when there is an MST claim that is files an MST related compensation claim, you're enrolled or registered in the VHA, and Consent to automatic notification. So, one of the things that you're going to probably be solicited for is whether or not the VBA can talk to the VHA about your MST. And that's, um, it's this is a more specialized thing that they've done relatively. I want to see here. When was it? Hold on. Bear with me. So this is a relatively recent thing, so I'm not 100% sure about it, but I just wanted to point out that there's going to be some consent forms, and these consent forms are not they're not they're pretty benign. Like, they want to just make sure that they can just talk back and forth if they need to. Like, if you report something, they want to make sure that you have mental health coverage. Okay, because MST comes with they afford you treatment, um, if you claim it, you get diagnosed and whatnot. So at the minimum, there should be mental health treatment. But this is just talking about, was the MST related compensation claim submitted on or with a form that includes automatic notification language consent? If no, if yes, there might be a couple of correspondence that you have. And I'm just saying that this is part of the normal process. That's where I'm kind of generally summarizing this, that the VHA communication consent form and VHA enrollment. If you're not enrolled with the VBA or the VHA, sorry, if you're not enrolled with the VHA, they want to make sure that you can be enrolled with the VHA so that way you can receive mental health treatment for a certain period of time until you get service connected. Now, and that's basically all I want to talk about this, is that you're going to see the notification. If you have filed a claim for compensation for a condition due to personal traumatic events involving sexual trauma, and you are registered or enrolled in VHA healthcare, you have the option for the Veterans Benefits Administration to electronically notify the VHA about certain upcoming events during your claims and appeals process. Now, why do we do this? Okay, is we're trying to wrap services around you because we understand that if we're going to talk to you about sensitive things, that it could drag things up. So we want to make sure that the mental health providers know and they're aware, so that way they can wrap more services around you. So that way we don't leave you hanging, is kind of what this is for. Okay. Um, it that's the focus of this. So keep that in mind. Nobody's questioning you. Nobody's trying to like double check your story and your theory or anything like that. They're just literally trying to make sure that we understand that this is a very sensitive topic and that you specifically might have worsening symptoms by having to report these things and talk about these things to some degree. So I just wanted to point that out to you guys, that that's something that, is just going to happen and why it happens. Now, the final thing, because we're at 28 minutes, I wanted to talk about who processes the claims. Now, I've kind of hinted around about it and I've talked about it, but what's going to happen is that MST claims must only be taken by an individual who has completed the requirements for MST training modules, has been designated as an MST claims processor, and either is assigned to an specialized MST claims processing site or special mission station responsible for claims due to other circumstances, or they're a military services coordinator assigned to do pre-discharge claims. So why do I bring this up? I bring this up because historically this was not the way this was done. And I was an MST coordinator before this was done. And I raised holy Cain about individuals not, and I'm not the reason why this changed. Okay, let me just say that up front. But I'm one of the reasons why this changed, is because we would have individuals, just non-trained individuals, who would be touching claims, asking for, oh man, there was one time somebody solicited for specific evidence related to the event. the person on person crime. They wanted actual physical evidence of it. And I lost every amount of respect that I had. I went to the director's office and was like, look, no, no. And number one, we need to be contacting that person's medical provider. I mean, I contacted the veteran's medical provider. I contacted, I tried contacting the veteran. I couldn't get in touch with the veteran to tell them to not check their mail, to throw away anything that the VA gave them for the next 20 days. And, you know, I mean, there's a reason why this was changed, because in those times were darker times for processing MST claims. And now we have a set of standards. Now, are the standards the best in the world? No, they're not. But you at least get people who are trained in compassion, right? They're trained to watch what they say and how they say it. So that way they, there's a lot more, and I wish that this training could be generalized to every single rater and every single VSR, because it makes the training reinforces constantly the fact that the veteran is a human being, that they experience something that is their truth. And I don't you have to check your feelings at the door, and you have to be on the side of the veteran, trying to find any reason you can grant them, any reason. And I mean, like, I can't say how it works today, but I've seen the training modules, and I've seen the training, like all that stuff, and the training sites. So they do these claims on a daily basis, right? The training, the specific MST sites, like I know that Puerto Rico was one up until recently, and I think Alabama took it over. I don't know. I'd have to look that up. But these sites, this is what they do on a daily basis. So it's not like something that they got to dust off every once in a while and go, okay, how do I do this? And, they have a checklist. They have a personal trauma checklist, and they have an incident marker worksheet. Now, this is for the stressor. Like, these are, for the most part, the checklist is to make sure that every single step is taken, and the checklist gets uploaded to the VBMS, right? So this isn't so somebody can just, it's harder for them at these sites and individuals working the MST claims. It's harder for them to have a bias, because they have to check certain, like, I'll see if it'll let me pull it up. Let's see. Well, let me, no, see, I can't reach it. Of course, I can't reach it on here, but fair enough. Thank you, Doug Collins, for putting things in the manual we can't reach. Let me try the incident marker. Nope, it's on the internet. Okay, but this is actually true, because I used to have to fill these out. To ensure the accurate claims processing, the following checklist and worksheets are required for completion and uploading to the claims folder. This is true. So I want to kind of put out there that if you are an MST survivor and you were historically denied under maybe, pre-2018 or so, things have changed since then. And if you're up for it, maybe you can do a new claim utilizing, some of the new training modules, some of the new training processors, and you're not getting some, wackadoo VSR like you did in the past, who they didn't do these claims. They didn't have any functional understanding about MST or personal trauma or anything like that. They were just treating it like it's a PTSD claim. And they have drastically different stressor requirements. Okay, so, and the VSRs historically, who didn't have the specialized training, they didn't know how to use the behavioral marker stressor system. So it was horrible, and it needed to change. And I like the fact that it changed, and I like the fact that not every, idiot is touching it. And yes, there are a lot of idiots out there. They they look at claims like they're numbers, and they don't see the person on the other end of it. And that is something that I wish that we could change. But I don't know, guys. So this is part one of the, oh, we're at 34 minutes. This is part one of the MST claims. So what we're going to be doing in the next video is how the stressors are developed for and conceded, and behavioral markers and how those work and what those look like. So that's about all I got for you today on this. We'll go ahead. Me and the dogs are going to see you guys at the live stream tonight. Yeah. So, and we'll just have a good one. Live stream tonight is only going to be an hour long. I can't go any longer than that. I do have an obligation tonight. So anyway, thank you guys. And if you made it to the end and you haven't liked and subscribed, please do so. I appreciate it. Anyway, Raider out.